Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to NDTV's flagship series, India Through the Eyes of Its Icons. There are very few in life like India who transcend seamlessly into the various roles that life has for them, whether it is the profession or the life. Ever so graceful, Mrs. Shabana Azmi is one of them. Mrs. Shabana Azmi, welcome to NDTV.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Azmi, the career begins when you are a child artist. You make your debut then, but then you go on to make multiple films. Then comes Tumhari Amrita, one of the most iconic plays that you have done, and also television. So several genres of cinema, several platforms, several mediums. How's the life been?
I'm very grateful for the life that I've had, and I really thank my stars that it's really, when I look back at my work, firstly when I started 50 years ago, I had no idea that I would still be working 50 years later and that I'd still be getting substantial roles. But when I look back on my career really objectively, I feel it's about being at the right place at the right time. So I've been singularly lucky in that.
Well, it's very, what should I say? It's very
modest of you.
No, I was actually taking it to the other direction. I was saying that it's quite surprising that you say so, because I spoke to your husband and I asked him, and this is one of my favorite questions to the people who are high achievers in life, that how much do you attribute luck to your success? And he said, I don't believe in anything like luck.
Really? Well, his story has been really one of grit and determination and hard work and moving ahead in spite of great adversities. I've had a very comfortable existence in spite of the fact that till the age of 9, because my father was a member of the Communist Party, we lived in a commune. And so we had a room which was literally this small, about 180 or 200 square feet, and we were 8 families living together, and we had 1 toilet and 1 bathroom. So it was completely different from the life that my other classmates were sharing, for instance. But I think that is what is intrinsic, has become intrinsic to my nature, which is a spirit of camaraderie, of shared experiences, of living a family life, which I found in theatre, I found it in films, and in spite of the fact that we didn't have any money at all, and my father used to earn only 40 rupees a month because he was in the CPI, and so my mother had to start working and my dad had to start working and things like that. Money never seemed to be an issue. So it wasn't something that I had to ever struggle against, the fact that we didn't have any money. Then when I got into films, first I went to the Film Institute and came out with a gold medal and enjoyed my work very much then. And then it was all smooth sailing, touch wood. So I wouldn't think that I've had to battle great
odds.
Great odds. So I think Javed's experience has been different.
And Earth, Ankur, Masoom, Fire. One of the most, it's quite a range. There is joy, there is, complex characters, and it's very Shabana Azmi. I mean, these choices, not every actor has made. What defines you when you made those choices? I mean, what was happening in your mind?
I've been asked that question several times this year, and I don't think I've found the answer. Because, it was, in the case of Fire, for instance, I mean, that was the one thing that I had struggled. And I remember asking Javed, actually, I've done my career on my own. I've never had to ask, advice from either my parents or anybody around me. But it was when I was offered Fire that I asked Javed, I said, do you think I should do this film? And so he said, it's going to give you quite a lot of flack. Will you be able to defend your choice? And I said, yes. So he said, then go ahead and do it. So that was the one thing that I struggled with. But the rest of the films I attribute to the fact that they were being made. You know, I could have had the same amount of talent, but it would have been a closely guarded secret if those people weren't around and they weren't making the film. But I think it is such an intrinsic relationship that it becomes like a chicken and egg, that because they were there, I got this opportunity, but because I was there, they could give me that part. I don't know. But I really don't want to take credit for it, not because I'm being modest, but I do think it was a very rich time in Hindi cinema particularly, and it seemed to have come with a real bang and a wave, because just look what happened with Ankur. It became a huge success commercially, which was very important. I mean, given that it was such a small budget, and of course it got me the national award and I went abroad with it and all that happened. But in the wake of that, many more such films were made, and I was there, so I'm very fortunate. And then when I look at my career, you know, I think that, for instance, when I started working in Hollywood, that was as early as '89 when I did a film with Shirley MacLaine. Before that, nobody except for Shashi Kapoor, who had done Pretty Polly. There was nobody at that time. But something strange was happening in the world, because Asian actors were saying, we insist on colorblind casting. Why are we being only cast because of our ethnicity? Surely we are much more than that. And so there was that struggle also. So in fact, I asked John Schlesinger, why did you make her an Indian mother? Given that in the original book, in the original novel, Bernice Rubens had made her a Jewish mother. And interestingly, he said, you know, Asians have become so much a part of British fabric that they need to become more visible. So see, that was a change that was happening. Now, right up to the time I've done Steven Spielberg's Halo, when you go on a set like that of Halo, it's a microcosm of the world, because you have Polish actors, you have Americans, you have Canadians, you have Asians, you've got people from all over the world, and they're all coming together. And it doesn't seem to matter which country you come from. I also think there's a canny reason for it, because I think Hollywood has also worked out that, you know, these people have huge fan followings. So why don't we make films in which we take their actors, and then all those actors will also become. So in a sense, the fact that the world is shrinking and becoming a global village, that I think has helped this situation. But if we imagine that we are really going to be a part of world cinema, it's not going to happen. That's a dream.
That's a clever marketing ploy, you know.
Yeah, but it goes in our favor.
Get people with great fan following, and people will come in their native countries also to watch that.
That's right. So we are doing that. Look at what we are doing in the Hindi cinema. We're suddenly now absorbing actors from the South. And we are absorbing stars from the South, because we're saying, ooh, wow. So it's
always been the case, Mrs. Sridevi, Mrs. Jayaprada.
But that was a different thing. That was a different thing, because in fact they had come as very successful stars, and here now they were being put into the mold of the Hindi film heroine. The men who are coming in with all their glory of their reputation, and they're not changing it for Hindi cinema at all.
Let me ask you, that brings me to a very interesting point, although I wanted to ask you something again about Mr. Javed Akhtar and your very famous father. But let me ask you this first, that what is it, one is of course pandemic, one is of course OTT. These are the headwinds that Bollywood did face, multiplex industry also did face. But what is it, one headwind that Bollywood is facing, which is making it look paler for the first time probably, correct me if I'm wrong, in front of the Southern cinema? It's looking like paler commercially.
I think that we've still been chasing what we think is a box office formula. And I think we have to realize that there is no such thing as a box office formula. Because had that been the case, then all films that fall into the box office formula should have been successful. That's no longer happening. So I think really that it is time that we realize that content is king. And so instead of focusing on the star, if we focus on the content and
If you focus on the story,
on the story, yeah,
focus
it's
on
much
the
more
story?
than the story, but yeah, also the content. What is it that you are saying?
that was Mr. Salim said
And
that, you
how
know.
are you saying it? You see, also you have to recognize that films that don't have a wider appeal will have to control their budgets somewhat, because then to win audiences over is definitely going to take time, also because of the fact that the OTT has eaten into the Hindi film industry, because लोग समझते हैं कि अच्छा ये फिल्म तो आ जाएगी ना 2 महीने 3 महीने के बाद OTT पे आ जाएगी तो हम सब बैठ के देखेंगे, उसमें ही क्या है. और अब तो popcorn, if it is caramelized, will be charged more than salted popcorn. So we were struggling कि अच्छा हम लोग आधा आधा खाते हैं, you know, हम लोग आधा salt और आधा caramelized खाते हैं. कितने पैसे देने पड़ेंगे हमको? People have to do that.
But Mrs. Azmi, I mean, your life and people who have been part of your life, starting with your father, his influence on you. He was a leftist, a tall left leader, and then your marriage to Javed Akhtar. How have men influenced your life?
And how is it, let me add to that, you know, how is it to live with somebody who has very strong journey of life and learnings out of that? How is it living with somebody like that? You also have...
I find it very strange that you say influence of men. It's also influence of women. My
Yes.
mother was very, very
Men
strong.
and women. Let me correct myself.
So strong woman, and she's had an equal measure of involvement and inspiration in my life. But of course, having Kafi Azmi as a father was a very different experience because he was progressive. And in my house, I grew up with taking gender equality as a given. In fact, but 70 साल पहले उन्होंने लिखी थी औरत उठ मेरी जान मेरे साथ ही चलना है तुझे, at a time when it was believed that women's place is in the home and the hearth looking after the children. And he said, no, you march along with me. Now, he was a rare person who practiced what he preached. So I must have been like about 19 years old when I first realized that, oh my God, what I take for granted is an exception rather than the rule. Because what used to happen is when my mother was working and she would be touring, my father would dress us up. My father would take us to school. When he was working with the textile workers and all that, because we couldn't afford a maid, he would take me with him and they would all put me on their shoulders and I would see the color red, and I thought red was party time. For me, it was just that, you know, it was just so smooth. But after that, I have to tell you two, three things that my father said to me, which have been a very big influence in my life, is when I decided that I really wanted to act, I asked him, I said, Abba, मैं act करना चाहती हूँ, will you support me? And he looked me straight in the eye and I said, Bete, I will support you in whatever you choose to do. If you tell me that you'd like to become a mochi, if you'd like to become a shoemaker, I will support you in that, provided you tell yourself that you will try and be the best shoemaker in the business. Now, you know, for a young person to have that kind of support, the whole world opens up for you. So my father has been a very strong influence in my life. In fact, when I started working in the slums, when I look back about how it started, what was my involvement, I think the poem Makan had a very big something to do in my life, because it talks about the plight and the irony of the construction worker who with his blood and sweat builds this fancy building, and when it is completed, he himself is not allowed to get into that building because a chowkidar is put there. तो वो मकान का मेरे सर में कहीं ना कहीं कुछ उसका हिस्सा था. जब एंटी कम्युनलिज्म में it was exact fallout of the pluralistic life that I had that I had come out of a celebration of India's diversity. To this day, Holi, Diwali, Eid, Christmas, all these festivals in our house are celebrated with splendor. And it's got nothing to do with religion, but it's got to do with culture, right? So that has been an influence. But after that, for me, I thought my partner would have a tough act to follow, because I thought my father was the complete person, and then Javed turned out to be all that and more, because he truly is the most feminist person I know, and he strips it bare from all its labels and sees it for himself. So he has been a very strong influence in my life, just like I've been a very strong influence in his life, because we are friends above all. Javed is fond of saying that Shabana and I are such good friends that even marriage couldn't destroy our friendship. So it's that kind of relationship. But the fact is that my mother has had a very huge influence on my life. Even when I watch myself acting, I see
a glimpse of her?
Not just a glimpse of her, of the process. And it was not something that she sat me down and spoke about it, but it was, like a process of osmosis, because I would see how she dresses, how she walks around the house in the character, how completely involved she would get in doing her lines, etc. And I see myself doing exactly that. So I can't even say clearly कि यहाँ मेरे अब्बा का influence खत्म होता और यहाँ मेरी अम्मा का शुरू हुआ. Just together.
Let me ask you one question, about, again, let me take back you to the Bollywood side. You have done some foundational work actually in the progressive cinema, and you have done some great, ravishing Bollywood movies, commercial successes, etc., etc. What do you think separates the two? What do you think? Surely the way the movies are made would generally be the same, but why, after a certain point in time, the challenge that the progressive cinema faced, why did it go through that process? And
it was inevitable, because obviously it was preaching to the already converted, and so there was a much smaller audience for it. And we've been struggling for a long time with the government and saying that instead of producing films, if you could guarantee theatrical release and distribution for the films, enough number of private producers will make those films. What is the point of making films that you're just stacking up in tins and they don't get a release? So what we really need to do is to build smaller theaters with smaller seating capacity, with subsidized rates, so that people who choose to do, but now it's become part of the multiplex, and the multiplex is showing the same kind of cinema over there, and the popcorn and everything is going along with it. So why can't we have, smaller theaters in which we can guarantee that these films will be seen? Because you see, most of the time they have to depend very heavily on word of mouth. And in word of mouth, you have to hold on to the film in the theater, even when it doesn't fill the coffers immediately. And to do that, if you have to pay the huge rentals of a big theater, you can't afford it.
And you move on to various formats. I'm trying to understand from you, particularly theatre. Is that your first love?
Not really. Not really. It's something that I grew up with, but please realize that I am basically a cinema-trained actor. And it is international cinema, which I had the good fortune to see when I was at the Film Institute, because I was seeing Ingmar Bergman, whom I absolutely love. Liv Ullmann is my most favorite actress in the world, and there was Kurosawa, and there was Fellini, and people that I would never even have imagined, because if I were in the city here, none of these films were available at that time, right? So that expanded my vision, and that I think influenced my aesthetics and my choices. But I'm sorry, I forgot what was your original question. What
Yes,
was
so
your question?
I'm going to ask you, since you speak about international filmmakers, Shyam Benegal, Satyajit Ray, you have worked with them as well here in India. They are the best,
The titans. Of
the titans, as they say. Is there any cinema filmmaker that is very close to you, or you feel that he brought the best out of
Shyam
you?
Benegal, without doubt. Because Shyam Benegal, you see, I would have always been happy. In fact, I do still think of him as my mentor and as my guru. And he has influenced me in many ways, not just as a filmmaker, but also as a person. But Shyam was a reluctant guru. He didn't want me to be his mentor, in that protege, in that sense. In fact, he didn't want to be anybody's guru. And he, above all, was my friend. And he was the person that created that space, had the generosity to say that you are my friend. And it is something I value very greatly. And I had not started with Shyam, I think my career would have gone on a completely different trajectory. But the question you asked was, do you prefer theatre? Is there any particular? So, although I wouldn't say that that is what I am originally, I think the adrenaline of a live performance is something completely out of this world. In fact, only very recently I had this crazy thing when it's a technical play that I do with an image. It's just me alone with an image, and the image just disappeared and didn't come. And then for about 11 minutes, I was just regaling the audience, and the audience didn't even realize that this was a glitch, and it wasn't part of that. But I'll tell you another thing. Once I was arrested along with 16 slum dwellers on completely trumped up charges, and we were taken to the Colaba police station. And I said, no, I'm not going to take bail. This is absolutely wrong. You will have to let me go. And of course, he was saying, no. Now, my mother turned up, my father turned up, Javed turned up, Farooq Sheikh turned up, who was my co-star, and Firoz Abbas Khan, who was the director, turned up. And there were only 2 hours left to my performance of Tumhari Amrita. And I refused. I said, no, I'm not going to take it. So my mother goes up to the police and says, we grew up believing that the show must go on. Please let her go for 2 hours. I will bring her back and then you can arrest her. So he just looked and said, kis tarah ka pagal family hai. But the fact is that I went. 2 hours later, I was there on stage. We did the performance with all this adrenaline going, and we got a standing ovation. That kind of adrenaline rush you can never get in any other medium.
If Shyam Benegal is your favorite film director, who's your favorite actor?
Actor? Nasiruddin Shah.
No, and from the commercial cinema, you acted with likes of great Mr. Amitabh Bachchan.
Well, Amitabh Bachchan is a very, very fine actor, without doubt. He's also very versatile. I believe that it's difficult to say who's the best actor, because you can say it's the best performance. But a most definitive Othello can be a disastrous Hamlet. So then what? It's not like a horse race that the one who goes the fastest, longer distance is the thing. So it's a performance, right? So I imagine that when you would say, how do you define an excellent actor? I think versatility would be the hallmark. And Amitabh Bachchan is a very, very versatile actor. He's also extremely hardworking. I remember when I was working with him, तो हो गया, शॉट हो गया, डायरेक्टर ने ओके बोल दिया, वो एक कोने में चले गए सब लोग. अमिताभ बच्चन इज स्टिल स्टैंडिंग ऐसे. मैंने कहा, अमित जी, व्हाट आर यू डूइंग? ही सेड, डू यू थिंक आई कुड हैव डन दिस? मैंने कहा, अमित जी, हट गए सब लोग, वो कहीं और जा रहे हैं, they're doing another shot. आप कितना भी यहाँ ये imagine कर लो, इसको होने वाला नहीं है. But still imagine having that in your stomach after so long that you still think, can I do something better? I mean, that's very, very laudable. Not for nothing has he reached this position. He is quite special.
You know, your career has been about challenging status quo, taking risks. What next?
More of the same thing. You know, it's not as if the things that I was doing, I have reached. Because I think for an artist, the minute you think you've reached death knell, that's the end, because then you feel, sab past mein ho gaya. Nahin, but I don't think so. I want to live for another 50 years, and for another 50 years, I want to get challenging parts. So I always say, like Barbara Streisand का एक गाना है जो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है, I don't want much, I just want more.
Miss Azmi, let me conclude this, since we episodically broadcasted for half hour, although one could have chatted with you, I think, forever. But I'm sure you also have your busy schedule. Let me ask you one thing, you said right in the very beginning that the institute had a very big impression, and it forever left an indelible mark on what you are. What about teaching sometime?
You know, I've really wanted to teach. I mean, it's something that I really would like to do, because I've come to a point where I want to share. Because I really think that Roshan Taneja, who was my acting teacher, has contributed so much to what my understanding of acting is. Even now, so many years later, I say, oh, that's what Sir was talking about. But you know, I have this problem of 2 हफ्ते में acting सीख लो. नहीं, please don't get into that. If you tell me that I can teach you acting in 2 weeks, in 3 months, it doesn't happen. It's a lifetime of learning. But it's been something that I've been toying with. I really, really would like to teach, just because I want to share the benefit of all the richness that I have got because I'm a trained actor.
Ms. Azmi, my last question to you, and this relates to your female friends because you celebrate them. You often post pictures with all of them. And this is very quintessential you, one would say. Why do you think women should support women and make it about that great friendship around?
Because I think there is something so wonderful when you're with women, something that is devoid of any other thing, and just pure joy in being with each other. And women of all ages. I have friends who are my age. I have friends who are much younger than I am. But there's something pure, unadulterated joy. And I think when
unjudged.
Women, sorry?
Unjudged. There's no judgment.
Unjudged. And you can have the most inane conversation. And you can have the most interesting conversation, and there are no holes barred. But I do think when women support each other, they give the richness of that experience. होता क्या है कि हम लोग उसको networking बोल के उसकी सत्यानाशी करते हैं. The fact is that it's pure joy. In fact, Javed tells me, I never see you as happy anywhere else than when you are with your girlfriends.
I mean, that shows through your pictures as well, certainly.
I do enjoy them very much.
Miss Azmi,
Yes,
may you get more and more in life as
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ever so graceful Miss Shabana Azmi. Thank you very much for joining NDTV.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.